Yep. Welcome back to the It Bees Like That podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris, and I hope that today things regarding technology, audio, syncing, not looking like an English dubbed version of an episode doesn't happen. But if it does, whatever. So say the name, It Bees Like That sometimes. I don't know why, but I was thinking about maybe I saw something or read something or whatever, or doing what I so often do and compare days, a day in, with a day in the life of me back then. And I was like, damn, looking at my life today is crazy compared to how it used to be. Talk about this all the time, but if you're new or haven't tuned into the podcast for a while or haven't picked up on the fact that I'm going to beat this recovery thing to death and continue to recover out loud, and as I always say, hold out in front a practical version of recovery for people to look to or look at, pattern after, aspire to, whatever the case might be. Keeping that visible, even for people who are in recovery, who may feel tired, right? Because that happens to us too. We might wonder what, in fact, we do this all for. Because if you do like I do, and I'll get back on track, but if you do like I do sometimes and just kind of go on a mind trip, right? I won't call it a thought experiment because I don't necessarily know that that's what it is, but just take a trip in your mind by sitting thinking, and you wonder, and I can't be the only one. You wonder, like, what will all of this matter when I'm 80? What will all of this matter when I'm 85? What will all of this matter even if I don't make it to 80 or 85? What will it matter? Like sitting with my mortality, like so many of us often do when it is that time to sign the line, right? To get your ticket punched and move on, travel on to a different plane. What will any of this matter? Will this podcast matter? Any of that stuff. And I wonder, coupled with that or attached to that, like, what's the point? What's the point? Where do we find the keys and the answers? And I think sometimes we may just look in the wrong places. I think society does that as well. I think they largely expect to find or make assumptions about where answers should be found, and become frustrated when they aren't. Like, we can't find them where we expect they should be at, right? In the larger pool of I guess resources, is for lack of a better term, but where all of the people with all of the skills and credentialing and whatever exist. But what if profundity or profundities exist in the periphery or in the margins? An example would be an unexpected voice of reason or truth. It may come from someone like me, may come from someone like you, and seem like it comes out of nowhere because, again, isn't found where we expect answers or we assume answers or reason or solutions should be found. I don't know. But when I think about this in the recovery context, or frame it in a recovery context or perspective, And I remember how this form of thought process used to just baffle me. What I mean is the ability to sit with things that may confuse me, or sit with things that I don't have all the answers to, or sit in uncertainty, period, without being triggered and feeling the need to run to my solution. And that is connected to what I wanted to talk about first, or one of the things I wanted to talk about in this episode, and that is a day in the life of like what it used to look like at my worst. And it got pretty bad for me. I mean, this makes sense and is true, I think, for everyone, that the worst thing that you've gone through is the worst thing that you've ever gone through. This experience is subjective, so this is in no means an attempt to compare or classify as worse, or like get into like some kind of like trauma Olympic confrontation or flex or any of that kind of shit. Just simply putting out my own experience and how I classify the worst of the worst days for myself. I would say wake up, but you would have to have had at least some sleep in the night preceding the morning, which, if I were lucky enough to be drunk enough or have the right combination of exhaustion, because most of the time I was terribly high. Like meth has this habit, no matter how much you drink, of keeping you up. But I was one of those people where I couldn't, like when I would hear people talking, even in my experience with meth and drugs, dog, like, look, man, the longest I think I made it was like, and this is being generous, 36 hours. I don't even think I could make it that long, because I would like, at 24, and this is without alcohol, I'm legitimately falling out at intersections, like in my car. Be wide awake and spun out 1 second, and then have, the passenger, whoever, yelling at me like, wake up, this light's green, like just boom, falling out of nowhere. And this is not good. But anyway, not to get sidetracked, you would have to have had some sleep the night before. But just for conversation's sake, we'll call it when I woke up in the morning. Most of the time, it was pretty early. Like my internal withdrawal clock was like pretty punctual, and the level of intoxication that I would wake up with or to would see most people probably on their way to the hospital with alcohol poisoning. But for me, that just meant that I hadn't had a drink in 2 or more hours, and I was feeling really, really bad. So 99% of the time, I would have at least some alcohol on hand. And if not, then, quickly on my way to the store at 6 a.m. to secure with whatever little money I had. Or, and I'm not going to sit up here in front and act like I was just like this big old petty thief. Like, shoplifting terrified me. I did it a couple of times, but I would usually like pawn something or sell something, or find another way to get whatever it is that I needed before doing that. I mean, I did it, but anyway, and then I would start my cycle, right? So, like I say, most days I would have whatever it is that I needed, which would either be some vodka, cheap vodka. Like I'm talking about like 5-star or some shit like that. Just nasty rock gut shit. And, a pipe full of dope. And I would just sit in the garage or bathroom or wherever it was and just work on getting well. And the craziest part is like, I knew this about addiction. I mean, a lot of us know, especially if we've got some experience with it. Like, you reach a certain point where, and I've talked about this many times, where we're high. Don't get it twisted. We're high, we're drunk, we're whatever the effect might be. But I mean, it's not fun. Like, we're not kicking it. We ain't partying. You know what I mean? It's usually with a head full of shame and guilt, and you're working on getting past some moderate withdrawal symptoms, if you were in my shoes. And the rest of the day you're spent maintaining that, and then, doing your best to stuff down or, shield yourself from the cascading effects of, like I say, shame, guilt, because it's not like, kicking it in your teens and 20s. You don't have the life experience, most of us anyway, to have acquired and then lost a lot. So we don't have that kind of like comparison that we can't reach over to and reference, like this sense of tremendous loss of having built a business, or, and even getting kicked out your pad, like, ooh, so what? You lost the roommate situation. Bam, here's another one. And most people, at that age, if at least you still get up and you got a little booty ass 9 to 5 and you're making some efforts, they just kind of write off all of this stuff as just being young, part of being young. But you hit a certain age and people start looking at you like, damn, bro, like, the party ended a long time ago. You still going, huh? All right. Well, unfortunately, that's where you get to. And in my case, I was able to, not saying that other people haven't done this, but I at least was like, when I started down this trip, I looked at my wife one day and I remember I was like, look, this is the timeline, and I guarantee, like, this is eerie. I said, this is the timeline. We'll have 1.5 to 2 years before we lose everything. And it'll start with this, and then it'll go to this, and then it'll go to this, and the last thing we're going to lose is this family. They're going to take these kids away. And I was right. About 100% of that. But then back to the day. So spending the day, and it's just not a good existence, right? Because you have all of this stuff that you're dealing with, all of these emotions, and you never really are adequately able. I mean, it's something that you're running from, like in a dream, that you're just able to stay ahead of, and then you fall. Just able to stay ahead of. And you're looking for all these different resources just to stay afloat. And, you're running out of lies to spin, and, you're running out of places to sleep, and self-confidence and determination are out. Like, everything is just gone, and you're burnt. And at least in my case, just hovering on the brink of doing something that's going to, like, drastically change everything for you and the people around you, and possibly something that you can't come back from. And that's where I was. Like, I was at that point. I especially after my family was split up, I was at a point where I was like, don't play with me. Do not, I'm not in a position to feel like I have anything left to lose. What you gonna do? Like, and I was suicidal as well, and already started making trying my hand at suicide, and some pretty serious ones at that. And I was determined to make things pretty messy. If they were going to be messy like that for me, then they were going to be messy like that for a few other people. And thank God that things turned out the way that they did. And I say that because I believe, again, that God has a plan, an ultimate plan for things that we could never possibly know until they're revealed to us. But at the end of the day, no matter what I had going on every day, there was a point where you reach a level of saturation before you go over this. Oh, well, I did. Before you go over this tipping point with either the dope or the booze or both, right? Where you reach this kind of level, and it's really brief, where you reach this level where you get like these moments of brilliance, I call them, like moments of clarity, and you feel, or I would feel, empowered and committed and determined, and like elements of like who I thought that I might be would come out, and I'd make all of these promises, and I'm gonna get clean, and I'm gonna do all this stuff. And I see that in people today, and essentially see myself in them. And that's one of the reasons why I'm compelled to continue to do this work and make this podcast and continue to, do the stuff that I do, because I know that if I can find a way out, if God can see fit to give me grace enough to map out or chart a path for me out, then I know that other people can too. And I do feel called to do this work. This is work. No matter how you feel about it, this is work. When I get up and I decide to pour myself into an episode and be vulnerable and put this stuff out there for all 53 of these people to view, it's not a small thing. And I don't know how well people appreciate that. And I would challenge you, if you think that this is easy, to do it yourself and see how comfortable you would be with putting out more sensitive details about your life to people that you don't know. There's a potential for anyone and everyone to access these videos anywhere and do whatever they want with them. You know what I'm saying? That is not, if we're talking about a secure position, that's not a very secure position, right? Like, because I'm opening myself up. But that, I think, is necessary, right? Talking about what a day looked like for me is necessary. Waking up, getting well, and then spending the rest of the day just chasing that. That's all I would do, is just chasing that the rest of the day. How am I going to do that? Am I going to go work this angle? I'm going to go lie to this person, or I'm going to go, we're going to go pawn this thing, or we're going to steal this and pawn that, or we're going to lie about this. The incredible energy that went into, driving 2 hours just to get a bag, bro. Like, that's crazy. I guess it's not that crazy, because if I were to say that I would not drive 2 hours to get something as simple, I'd probably be lying, because I would drive that far to get some bomb-ass food. But I think one is far less damaging than the other. Then if we fast forward to even, I don't know, let's go 30 days away from that. In the first 30 days that I got clean, I was supposed to go to treatment. I've talked a bit about this before, but I was supposed to go to treatment. My wife was in treatment. I didn't get to make it. I spent my first 30 days alone in a hotel room in Everett at the Econo Lodge. Looking back at that, I can understand why nobody who was experiencing me at that time had any faith whatsoever that I was going to have the ability to stay clean. But again, I say that God in that moment circled that spot on the map for me and understood that for me is what I needed. God said, nah, bro, you don't need to go to residential inpatient anywhere. You just kick it right here. You got a handful of good people who, at least in this moment, think that this is a good fit for you, or able to provide for you. I think this is a good fit, so I'm going to make this space available to you. And that's what happened. And I look back on it, and I was livid at first. I said I spent the first week very frustrated and very angry, because I have this idea mapped out in my head, like, this is how it's going to go. Me being in control of things, right? Instead of, like, God being at the helm and not me. But slowly I fell into a little groove, and before you know it, I had 30 days. And there did come a time, an opportunity, where I can't remember who it was, but they were like, hey, I got a bed day for you. I'm like, bro, I'm not going to treatment, dog. I got 30 days. At this time, I think I had like 45, but I'm like, that's not happening. I'm not, because I got shit rolling now. Like, I'm trying to work on visiting my kids and working on these other services. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when my family was separated and my kids were living with other people, I had to do certain things to get that ball rolling, right? And that meant getting different assessments and participating in IOP and all that stuff. And I made a commitment when I talk to y'all about setting a personal standard for your life that's so incredibly high. I had to do that. The only way that I was going to make it through any of these experiences to do with the child welfare system and addiction at the same time, and while battling being unsheltered, was that had to be it. That had to be it. I had to set it rock star level high. Anything else wasn't going to cut it, because there was so. I would have easily been sidetracked by resentment, elements of ego and pride, and it would have created a disaster. What that made me do is understand that I'm doing this for something much bigger. Much, much bigger. And I got to be honest with y'all, like if it were just me and it was only me at stake, I don't know, man. I can't say for sure because that wasn't, how my story was written. But I don't know, man. I didn't assess a lot of value to myself at that time. So I had to set the personal standard for my life incredibly high and hold out in front of me the goal. And that was, changing the experience that I'd created for my kids, my family, all together. But, the kids, that was the biggest thing. And I don't just mean the ones that were not in my care anymore, but all of them. Because I got 5 kids, and everyone's been impacted by my addiction and going to prison and jail and treatment and going on runs and being incognito or incommunicado for whatever the hell, just MIA for like months at a time, like just being out in places that I ain't got no business at, and just being no one can find me. No, I'm not talking to anybody, and then I pop back up. And just like this kind of like in and out, like roller coaster of inconsistency that isn't fair for anyone. I had to find a way out of that. I had to make it longer than 90 days of sobriety. I had to find a way to be able to look at, this is a major part, like be able to look at myself in the mirror and forgive myself for all of the shit that I'd done, but also find a way, even if I couldn't forgive some of the people in my life who had harmed me, finding a way to not let it go, but move past it. Even if I can't forgive them, move past it, offer it up to God, whatever the solution is or was. I had to find a way because that shit was eating me up, eating me alive. And this is the stuff, this is the internal like dialogue, like you're a piece of shit, evidenced by X, Y, and Z. This wouldn't have happened or that wouldn't have happened. If you were worthwhile, and as ridiculous as it sounds, it still hurts to even talk about it. But, when you have things from when you were just a helpless little guy, and, being able to now understand that that the adults in my life had their own shit going on, that they were like me once and they had their own shit going on and they made their own mistakes and all that kind of stuff. But, when we're most of us, we're stuck in the theater of ourselves, right? So we're bound to the confines of this narration, until we can grow out of certain boundaries or include certain things. This is what we're limited to. And the shit that I just talked about is the loudest. That's the loudest. You don't reach a point. I mean, you have to reach a point of experience and wisdom. And not that these other messages get quieter, but you just learn how to listen to the other stuff more or as much. And pay attention to the other stuff less. I'm not sure how much of it ever actually goes away. Because I still deal with it today. Almost 6 years sober. Still deal with it. And I see it come up. It's attached to certain things. Like there's certain things that people can't say to me. Because it's mandatory respect. Well, maybe it's not respect, but you know, there's an immediate response that is usually not positive and doesn't feel very good for the person on the other end. And that's shit that I'm working on. But you know, I have these meetings with people and we process different things and we offer each other time to just listen. And this is important. Especially for black males. You know, this is important because we don't have forums like this. I don't have my dad anymore. So I don't have that. Well, I do now, but I didn't. And this is important. I don't know that a lot of people really understand, especially for males, period, to have this. But just realizing that, you know, these things, they're not attached. Like, it's easy to say, oh, well, you're aggressive when it comes to this. Well, you may not understand that trigger is a definition or reflection of pain that this thing is attached to. Real pain. Real deep pain, searing pain that I don't want to deal with, or, you know, the person doesn't even have to be me, but an individual doesn't want to deal with. So that's what you get right away. You get that visceral response. You get that immediate jab. You get that immediate, you know, like, hey, back the fuck up, bro. That's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to see. And that's something like I'm really, really trying my best to work on. Because that pain, no matter where it comes from or what it's attached to, that's really about me. It's really about me. And it's easy to say, oh, well, people just don't know how to treat you right. That might be true in some circumstances, but when we're talking about our responses to certain things and the attachment and the reason why the attachment to that pain is so caustic and just still so real. This is shit that is important to me to learn more about, learn to navigate. Because you wonder, right? Like, what happens? Damn, this nigga was, this fool was clean for X amount of years. And you know what happened, bro? Like, what happened to the recovery? Like, you seemed like you were doing so well. Well, look, man, this stuff, it just kicks it. It doesn't go anywhere. Our essence, our soul, our energy like that, whatever you want to call it, it has a record. It keeps a record. Look at like this. I don't know about y'all, but like sometimes I look in the mirror and I see the differences in my face, right? I don't have a lot, but you know, I see like some of the wrinkles around my eyes, or the ways that, you know, my nose, or, you know, different things are just different, you know, than when I was a boy. But my eyes are the same. I still see the same eyes when I look in the mirror as I did when I was 8 years old, when I was 9 years old, when I was 10 years old. Same ones. But everything around it changed. The world is different, and my body's responding to time. That person is still alive in there. So where is it that we're still allowed to be that person in your life, in our lives today? Where is it ever okay to be that person? Where is it ever okay to be afraid to be vulnerable, to be open, to be transparent? Where is it ever okay to not have the answers? Where is it ever okay to just want to be protected, to have people be nice, to have love and peace? Where is it ever okay? Especially as a man, because we don't talk about this stuff as guys. I mean, more and more I think we're having these conversations, and I can with a couple of people, but generally this is like unacceptable behavior. And that, I think, is where so many things get lost. And I mean, I don't know if, speaking for myself, it hasn't been a part of this version of recovery, but I could see where that happened before. You know, just being worn out by that, triggered by that, back into like a, you know, the psychological and emotional architecture is still there. That's why recovery is a daily thing. Why it's mandatorily dues are paid. Mandatory that dues are paid daily. The work is mandatory every day because that architecture is still there in your brain. It doesn't ever go anywhere. So today, I'm going to close with this. Today, life is substantially better. And I'm able to enjoy life in ways that I'd never imagined were a reality for someone like me. So if you feel like that right now, I'm going to encourage you to kick it right where you're at, but hang on. You know, a year from now, you never know what could be. 2 years from now, shit. You know? You just never know. Have a little faith. I know that's easier said than done, but have a little faith. I think things will be all right. Well, maybe that's a dangerous thing to say, that things will be all right, because they're not always all right. Not even in recovery. Things aren't always all right. Things are fucked up sometimes, but overall, the larger point is that, look, if you're watching this, I don't know you. I don't know you, but I know myself. And if I can make it out, trust me, if I can make it out, you can too. If you didn't do it on the way in, think about doing it on the way out. Hit that like, subscribe, and post notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the cool shit we talk about here on the Beats Like That podcast. Peace, y'all.